Who is Vusi Kat Matlala?
Long before his name would echo in parliamentary hearings and anti-corruption protests, Vusimuzi Kat Matlala was already well versed in the language of violence and shadow deals. His criminal journey began in the early 2000s, where whispers in the townships of Gauteng placed him at the center of a series of cash-in-transit heists and house robberies. He was quick, elusive, and brutal, earning the nickname Cat for his ability to vanish and strike without warning. Amidst institutional weaknesses and a rising organized crime ecosystem, Matlala was building his network, brick by bloody brick. He knew the value of loyalty, fear, and most of all, connections. But it was a meeting years later that would turn his story from gangster to government-linked kingpin. That man was Hangwani Morgan Maumela, a politically connected businessman with ties to procurement offices across Gauteng, especially Tembisa Hospital. Actually, he is the nephew of Cyril Ramaphosa from the previous marriage. Together they forged a deadly alliance, one that would span ghost companies, corrupted public officials, and a healthcare looting spree that would eventually claim lives, including one of South Africa's bravest whistleblowers. By the late 2010 ES, Maumela and Vusi had perfected a strategy to loot from the public purse, particularly from the already strained health sector. Using a sophisticated network of over 200 front companies, many of which were registered under associates, lovers, or employees, they rigged the RFQ, request for quotation system. They'd submit quotes from multiple controlled entities to guarantee one of their companies would win. One notorious transaction revealed by investigative journalists showed just how inflated these deals were. A basic medical supply costing 3.20 per rand unit was billed to Tembisa Hospital at 152 rand per unit. One order involving 8,000 units should have cost just 25,600 rand, but was instead billed at over 1.2 million rand, a markup of over 4,500%. Their scheme funded a lifestyle that shocked even the country's elite. Vusi and Maumela purchased homes in Sandhurst and Camps Bay, two of South Africa's most expensive neighborhoods. They drove 4 million rand luxury vehicles, flew in private jets, and hosted parties where money rained like confetti. But their reign of theft was not going unnoticed. In 2021, a courageous woman named Babita Deokaran, acting as the Chief Director of Financial Accounting at the Gauteng Department of Health, noticed irregularities in Tembisa Hospital's procurement books. Suspicious of the massive payouts going to obscure companies, including those tied to Maumela and allegedly Vusi, she ordered 70 million rand in payments to be frozen. I made a video about this months ago. You can watch it at the end of this video. On the morning of the 23rd of August 2021, Babita was shot multiple times outside her home in Mondeor, Johannesburg. The assassins fled, leaving behind a nation shocked by the execution of a civil servant who had merely done her job. Several suspects were arrested, and links to Maumela emerged almost immediately. Although no official indictment named Vusi, rumors among police insiders and local journalists painted a damning picture. Not long after Babita's death, the public started hearing about Vusi's other life, one far darker than his tender schemes. In late 2021, Vusi allegedly shot and killed his best friend Kosi in Mamelodi, reportedly over a debt that Matlala refused to pay. This murder, though never officially connected to Vusi, became folklore in Pretoria's underworld, where friends turned enemies ended up in coffins, not courtrooms. The death of Kosi marked a shift. Vusi was no longer just a fraudster cloaked in Versace and armed with spreadsheets. He was now a man feared by other criminals, a kingpin with a kill list. By 2023, Vusi Cat had transcended his criminal roots. He was now a businessman, a philanthropist, even a rumored advisor to high-ranking police officials. He had also become romantically entangled with multiple women, including Cordelia Kabeng, a young woman from a poor background whom he pampered with private jet trips and blue light convoys, and later with the actress Tebogo Tobajan. But behind the lavish Instagram stories and red carpet events, the blood trail never stopped. In August 2022, Vusi allegedly attempted to assassinate Joe Sibagnoni, known in the underworld as Joe Ferrari. Joe survived, but the attempt marked Vusi's public entrance into the domain of contract killings, an identity he would soon embrace. Behind the curtain, Vusi was also allegedly doing business with the infamous Jonathan Mswazi Masibi, a feared criminal overlord with reach across Gauteng and Mpumalanga. Upon Mswazi's death, Vusi was rumored to have taken up the mantle South Africa's new John Wick, feared not just by rivals, but also by state officials who were said to protect him. It is around this time that Vusi began courting influence at the highest levels of the South African police service. Photos emerged of him gifting a black Mercedes-Benz to Brigadier Julius Mkhwanazi, head of the Ekurhuleni Metro Police Department. Others claimed he had high-ranking protection from generals, commissioners, and even cabinet ministers. In November 2024, law enforcement agencies, including the Hawks, SAPS, and SARS, raided Durban businesswoman Shaun Kaiser's La Lucia mansion and seized over 40 firearms. At the time, Ms. McKaiser publicly denied any involvement. However, Ian Cameron, chair of the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee on Police, later disclosed that the weapons in question were registered to CAT VIP Protection, a private security firm owned by Vusumuzi Cat Matlala. If ordinary citizens illegally stored firearms at an unregistered premise, not fit for firearm storage, they would face criminal charges and have their weapons confiscated. Yet in this case, all seized guns were returned to the security company, and nearly 2 months later, parliamentary questions remain unanswered. This raises questions about regulatory oversight, potential impunity, and political influence, shielding a company under serious suspicion.
No, it was quite interesting. It was Monday during a press briefing when I said that I mentioned the wrong Vusi Musi in terms of firearms that were illegally stored at one of her properties. They were illegally stored. They were not meant to be there. I just by mistake said the wrong Vusi Musi. So I said Vusi Musi Matlala instead of Vusi Musi Kaba, and that's that. The point is there were severe irregularities, transgression of both the CIRA regulations in terms of private security regulations and also the Firearm Controls Act.
By early 2024, Vusi Muzi Cat Matlala had evolved from a shadowy tenderpreneur into a name whispered in fear across Gauteng's criminal and political landscape. He was no longer merely stealing from the state, he was executing power plays with bullets, and the line between boardroom and battlefield had all but vanished. His transition from fraudster to feared assassin was now undeniable. The money had elevated him to society's upper crust, but what truly cemented his authority was a string of brutal hits, each one more audacious than the last. In late 2022, South Africa woke up to shocking news. DJ Somebody, the popular Amapiano star and entrepreneur, had been shot dead in a hail of bullets in Johannesburg. The murder sent tremors across the entertainment industry, but underneath the mourning and tributes, a darker narrative was forming. Whispers began to circulate that DJ Somebody had close ties with a controversial figure in Gauteng's underworld, Joe Sibagnoni, better known as Joe Ferrari. Months earlier, in August 2022, Joe had survived an attempted assassination at the Centurion Gulf Estate gates, an attempt allegedly orchestrated by Vusi in what many believed was his final test to prove himself to the late Mswazi Masibi. DJ Somebody's crime? Loyalty to Ferrari. According to underworld chatter and leaked WhatsApp voice notes, Matlala was growing paranoid. Anyone connected to Ferrari was seen as a threat. Somebody's murder was said to be a strategic hit, eliminating an ally of a rival and sending a brutal message to the Pretoria underworld. In a grotesque display of arrogance and psychological warfare, Matlala and his wife, Tsakani TK Baloyi, attended DJ Somebody's funeral. They arrived with multiple bodyguards, dressed in black designer suits, flanked by men in dark sunglasses. The next body fell in early 2024. Alf Rams, once a close associate and friend of Cat, made the fatal mistake of asking for what was his, 2 million rand, money he had lent to Matlala months prior. Alf was a known face in Mamelodi's nightlife and a minor player in local tender businesses. He believed his closeness to Cat offered him protection. He was wrong. In February 2024, Alf was found dead in his car, shot execution style in Pretoria East. No valuables were stolen, no arrests were made. But insiders knew it was a message. Loyalty to Cat meant silence. Asking questions even about your own money was treason. But Matlala's ambitions weren't just personal, they were territorial. In Mamelodi, the township was dominated by a gang known as Boko Haram, a violent extortion group that controlled protection rackets, drug routes, and housing developments. At the time, the group was led by Zoro, a charismatic yet ruthless figure respected by both the streets and elements within local law enforcement. Vusi, looking to expand his empire, allegedly began infiltrating Boko Haram in mid-2023. His strategy? Divide and conquer. He built relationships with discontented lieutenants, killed 5 senior Boko Haram members, and used their deaths to ignite internal chaos. Suspicion grew, factions formed, and then, in late 2023, the unthinkable happened. Zoro was assassinated. Sources claim that Cat ordered the hit personally. The bullet that tore through Zoro was the death knell of Boko Haram's old guard. Within days, Matlala had absorbed the gang, rebranded it, and placed himself at the head. He wasn't just a criminal anymore, he was a warlord. His command of Boko Haram gave him access to extortion networks in Mamelodi and Ekurhuleni, informants inside the Ekurhuleni Metro Police Department, arms and drug routes reaching Mpumalanga and Limpopo. And with the gang now under his thumb, Cat began wearing the title whispered in hushed tones across townships, the John Wick of Mamelodi. I once made a video about this, you can watch it at the end of this video. Vusi's rise was not powered by strategy alone. His partner, Tsakani TK Baloyi, began to play a disturbing role in this empire of blood. Initially introduced to Vusi by actress Tebogo Tobajan, TK had become his confidant, lover, and alleged co-conspirator. Consumed by obsession and jealousy, TK allegedly asked Vusi to kill Tebogo Tobajan. By early 2025, Vusimuzi Cat Matlala was no longer just a feared gangster or a tender tycoon. He had become a national security threat, protected not just by his own ruthlessness, but by powerful individuals in government and law enforcement. His reach was no longer confined to township alleys or hospital corridors. It extended all the way into Parliament, SAP's headquarters, and even the office of the police minister. The collapse of justice was no accident. It was bought. One bribe, one promotion, one assassination at a time. In June 2024, a bombshell tender was awarded by the South African Police Service, SAPS, a contract valued at 360 million rand for health services across several police districts. The winning bidder, Medicare 24 Swine District, a company linked directly to Vusimuzi Matlala, despite being under investigation for procurement fraud at Tembisa Hospital tax evasion, possible links to the murder of Babita Deokaran, attempted murder charges involving Tebogo Tobajan. Vusi's company still received the contract. By December 2024, SAPS had already paid out 50 million rand of the contract's value. It wasn't until April 2025, following internal audits and external pressure, that the contract was cancelled due to fraud, fronting, and misrepresentation. But by then, the money was gone. In July 2025, KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner Mkhwanazi broke ranks and delivered an explosive public statement. In front of media cameras and legal observers, Mkhwanazi accused Police Minister Senzo Deputy Police Commissioner Shadrack Sibia, a known Vusi associate named Brown Magotsi, of orchestrating the disbanding of a critical SAPS task team, the Political Killings Task Team, to shield Vusi from arrest and preserve his SAPS contract. Mkhwanazi presented evidence taken from Matlala's own WhatsApp messages exposing a meeting arranged between Senzo and Sibia by Brown, instructions sent to SAPS officers to dissolve the task team investigating Vusi, a follow-up message confirming, as we speak they are bringing all the dockets to Sibia. Days later, a payment of 111,000 rand was made from Matlala's Medicare 24 account to an account allegedly controlled by Magotsi. The implications were staggering. This wasn't just bribery. It was state capture, executed in real time.
The evidence has been found in the cell phone of Mr. Vusi Musi, also known as Cat Matlala, which shows the communication between Mr. Brown Mokgotsi and the Minister of Police, Mr. Senzo Mchunu. As I said, this was the beginning of the closure of the political task team. I'll try to outline some sequence of events. I had said the team left for Gauteng to go and assist organized crime in Gauteng. There was a shooting incident that had occurred in April 2024, where Mr. Swart, a QTech employee, was fatally shot while entering the company premises. QTech has been a long-standing service provider to Transnet. Shortly after the incident, 3 suspects, including a warrant officer, a South African Police Service warrant officer, a detective Tau Pule, were arrested in Johannesburg. During the arrest, weapons that were used in this murder, which was an AK-47 and a pistol, along with cell phones, were confiscated. So they conducted a ballistic test in order to check whether these firearms were linked with that murder and many other murders perhaps that will have occurred in the country. On the 30th December 2024, the ballistic expert issued a ballistic report which linked these firearms not only with the murder of Mr. Swart, but these firearms were linked with a number of high-profile cases. And these cases include very high-profile South African artists that were murdered in Gauteng, which occurred dating back as far as 2021. I'm not going to mention them, but we have them on record.
Although he had been replaced as Minister of Police in 2024, Becky's name soon entered the spotlight again. A July 2025 investigation by News 24 revealed that Becky had stayed twice in Matlala's private luxury penthouse at the Capitol in Menlyn Main, Pretoria, during January 2025. The penthouse was leased in Vusi's name until April 2025. Around the same time, the 50 million rand SAPS contract payout was underway. Becky claimed that he didn't know Vusi personally and said there was nothing untoward about the stay. But critics weren't convinced. Was this simply a case of a generous acquaintance? Or was it another example of Vusi buying silence, access and protection? Among the most chilling indicators of Vusi's impunity was his brazen gifting of luxury vehicles to top-ranking officers. Photos circulated of Brigadier Julius Mkhwanazi, head of the Ekurhuleni Metro Police Department, receiving a black Mercedes-Benz, a gift from Matlala himself. According to insiders, the car was a reward for keeping operations quiet in Kempton Park and Mamelodi, both hotspots for extortion and gang activity. In return, Vusi's vehicles were never stopped. His convoys, often with blue lights, moved through red zones without resistance. He hosted private parties where officers were hired as bodyguards, dressed in official gear. Police uniforms were no longer symbols of law, they were symbols of loyalty to CAT. By July 2025, the story was too big to ignore. President Cyril Ramaphosa, speaking from Brazil, called Mkhwanazi's allegations a matter of grave national security. Opposition parties demanded a judicial commission of inquiry into SAPS procurement and political interference, the suspension of Police Minister Senzo and Deputy Commissioner Sibia, full disclosure of payments made to Medicare 24, protection for whistleblowers like Mkhwanazi, whose life is now at risk. In the aftermath of the Babita Deokaran assassination and the exposure of 1 billion rand in suspicious transactions tied to the Tembisa hospital, pressure began mounting on Vusi and his co-conspirators, most notably Hangwani Morgan Mamela. Sources within Gauteng Health Administration began leaking more files. Journalists were circling again. Civil society groups were threatening legal action to reopen frozen investigations that had mysteriously disappeared from SAPS and SIU databases. Then in early 2025, a fire broke out at Tembisa Hospital. Entire floors of archived procurement data and financial records were reduced to ash. SAPS initially cited an electrical fault, but internal whistleblowers and security personnel who spoke anonymously to journalists alleged otherwise. The fire wasn't random. It was strategic. They took the 3 RD floor archive rooms first. The Office of the Public Protector opened an investigation in February 2025, but found itself stonewalled by missing access logs and deleted internal communications.